What did the New York Times say? On the brink of fascism. Today's paper. On the brink of fascism. Hitler had the supreme fascist state. And what was he worried about in Europe and in Germany? He was worried about white genetic annihilation. What is everybody in Europe worried about now? White genetic annihilation. All these people from Syria coming up in here. People from Iraq. And it's some of them from the other side of the Mediterranean, sure enough. Now, we let as many as we could drown, but it's still some. And they're coming up in here. It's an article in the New York Times today about a group of German people who were killing immigrants, darker people from Turkey. What's going on in France? The National Front. Marie Le Pen. And how many votes did they get? How many votes did Trump get? See, the whole world of white is dealing with the problem of white genetic annihilation.
The Cows, Gus T. Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Monday, March 9, 2026. So I have been told. So we are on early, and we had or at least for, I guess, depending on where you are tuning in the known universe, for those of us here in the States, we are now on daylight savings time, so that our forward is massive. They have all kinds of research on how they have a higher number of traffic accidents the day after the spring forward, and even that increase lingers today. So be, I guess, alert for people who are in the States. Be alert if you're out on the road. I think especially, they say early in the morning, people might be a little groggy and not quite as alert as they normally would be. That for sure accounts for Gus T, as I am still adjusting to that hour, and we're on super early because it is a global system of white supremacy racism. So we have those massive time differences, and I think that will happen twice this week, unfortunately. Well, I guess, depending on your perspective, but it'll happen twice this week. We'll have guests on the program who are in different parts of the world. So I think we will also be here on Thursday early. I guess unfortunately, I'm no fan of the early programs, but global systems, so always glad to get different perspectives and hear about some of the differences and nuance depending on geography with regards to white power. Now, our guest for today, we have been doing our job globally for the entire time we've been broadcasting, and then specifically want to get micro, like the last 30 days or so. We have been excellent, in my view, in terms of talking to folks, talking to people from different parts of the globe. One of those guests, Dr. Paul Thomas, he was with us within that 30-day time period, joined us live from Norway. We discussed his book, Too Black to be here about the history of white supremacy racism in Norway. We talked about good old Anders Breivik, Benjamin Hermansen, number of different cases, local system of white supremacy in Norway. Within that discussion about his great book and his experiences with the racism in Norway, we talked about different books to illustrate white supremacy racism. One of the books mentioned we will discuss today. Our guest for today, that book, he wrote, it is titled Whiteshift, Immigration, Populism, and the Future of White Majorities, published in 2018. He's actually published a number of different texts that kind of look at racism and different components, different parts of the world. Hoot to have him on the broadcast to discuss this book, especially since you heard Dr. Welsing at the beginning talking about immigrants and the fear of immigrants and talk of immigrants all over the world. That is at the core of this here book. Excited to chat about that and racial classifications. Cannot say that enough. That's a big part of the book too. Racial classifications, white genetic annihilation, the crux of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's theory, white people in terms of fertility, demographic numbers, concerns, anxiety, fear about their total numbers, right at the center of this book, along with racial classifications. Hoot to have him on the program to discuss this here book, although not his most recent, but certainly and again, this is the book that we were told about from Dr. Thomas Bowe. Not his most recent. Maybe he can tell us about some of his other works and the work that he does out at the University of Buckingham. Joining us live from London, England. They are not on daylight savings time yet, so only a 7-hour difference between us. Our guest, Mr. Eric Kaufmann. Mr. Kaufmann, are you with us, sir?
Oh, hi. Is this Gus? Yes, I'm
yes.
here, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much to share a bit of your Monday evening. Thank you, sir, for hanging out with us.
All right.
Glad to chat it up about your book. I guess for listeners in the States or wherever they might be listening from, I guess if you could kind of briefly give us a little bit of info about the work that you do and some of what you've published.
Well, yeah, this was a book I wrote about the rise of right-wing populism or national populism in Europe and North America. Just trying to understand the cause of the rise and then the future going forward. So the argument was largely about immigration is at the center of the rise of national populism, and that also this is about the decline of white majorities in the West, which is creating these anxieties, which are feeding into immigration is sort of the lightning rod around that issue. And so that's explaining, I would argue, the rise of populist right, Brexit, Trump, Sweden Democrats, AFD, that kind of thing. Then looking ahead to what's likely to happen, and I'm arguing that essentially white majorities are likely to become mixed race majorities going forward, but that those mixed race majorities will carry forth the collective memories and so on of the white majorities.
Okay. And I guess I want to clarify one thing and then kind of get to the meat of the book, get some good questions in and such. When you say in this context, white majority, you mean white population numbers in terms of the actual count demographics, in terms of how many white people are in a so-called country or on the planet. That's what you mean when you say declining white majority, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The ethnic majority, the largest ethnic group in the society, or pan-ethnic group, I guess, if we're talking about the U.S., as a percentage of the population, so declines in that.
Gotcha. And he talks about this throughout the world. So global, in his book, System of Racism is Global global in the book as well. I guess, is it possible I can make a request early on? You, as I've already said, a professor, University of Buckingham. Is it possible that you can lower your vocabulary as you chat it up with us? I want to make sure that we do not miss any of the information. I'm going to ask for you to kind of explain some of the terms the way I just did with white majority, but that would be great. I'll give a reminder about that just to make sure we're not missing out on things. Oh my goodness. I remember from reading the very beginning of Whiteshift, where you talk about you write, I'll just read what you put down. You said, I, as someone who is a quarter Latino and a quarter Chinese, but is considered white by most people. I said, wow. Mr. Kaufmann, I don't know in terms of if you have like a passport, driver's license, if they include racial classification on it, because they do here in the States. But if they do, like what is your racial classification?
Well, boy, that's a good question. They don't have that on a license, but on the census you would pick from any number of boxes. So, I guess I would go white other, which is a category they have here.
White other. Let me see, when you say that's a category, and again, you're joining us live from London, England, correct?
I'm Canadian, so that's why I don't sound English.
Right. Born in Canada, but presently right now you're in England, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the census in England, is that like a category, or is that one of those where you can check multiple boxes to kind of make up your own thing, or is that an official category, white other?
It's an official category. There's white British, white Irish, and white other.
Wow. That is amazing. Okay. What is the difference between white other and white?
Well, white is the umbrella category, the what would you call which stands above the ethnic categories. So it would cover white British, white Irish, and white other would be under the white umbrella. It's a bit like in the U.S., German, Italian, and Irish would be under the white umbrella.
Okay, I get that, all part of the white classification, but what is the difference specifically between white other and white?
It's like saying Catholic and Christian. The one is a subcategory of the other. So white other is part of white, but it's a subcategory.
Okay, and what are the distinctions of that subcategory?
Well, you're not of British ethnic background or Irish ethnic background, so you might be of a white European ethnic background, including Jewish. That would fall under the white other. But you wouldn't be of Scottish, English, Welsh, or Irish ethnic background.
I'm still learning. That's a new one for me. White other. You can tell me if I'm rephrasing this accurately. Would it be accurate to say that white other, it seems to suggest that you have some sort of genetic material from a group that is considered not white?
No, there's also a mixed race category which you could tick, which I could tick. It's really your choice. Whatever you think fits best.
Wow. So this, how would you explain it to someone? Like I said, it's my first time hearing white other. So how would you explain it to someone who is, explain it to us like we're 6 years old. What is the difference between white other and mixed race? What's the difference between those two categories?
White other, you would tend to be seen as not mixed race, or at least not mixed race enough to be, people wouldn't consider you as mixed race. mixed race, typically someone who's 50% one thing, 50% the other. I'm generalizing a bit crudely here, but that's roughly what it is. So you're more visible. That's as good as I can get. These are all kind of shades of gray.
Well, I thought that was a book about all that sexual bondage and such. And even some of it is, you almost have to laugh at the absurdity of it. I did have this down. A great bit of this comes back to the AI slop of racial classification. It's basically what white people say it is. So they can make up all these new classifications and hybrids, and even put in that you can check as many boxes as you want, because they've been encouraging that in the U.S. as well. But I mean, even down to the tail end of his answer, and I really still didn't really get a great distinction between the two. I guess maybe you look less white, mixed race, maybe, like whatever.
Well, they're all self-chosen, right? So you get a form, you got to tick one or the other, and that's how it works. But I don't think these are just. I don't think it's just one group of people that decide it. There's consultations, and these are all negotiated categories. I don't see them as imposed. I think they're used socially. It's not just administratively.
Well, I think there's quite a bit of imposing in the system of white supremacy racism. We did have the scholar Ian Hani Lopez as a guest on our program, and they have had lots of Supreme Court cases about racial classifications, and it is not at least in this part of the world, and I would think that we've talked to folks in South Africa too, and those racial classifications are very serious in the system of white supremacy. You do not just get to go, everybody could just, hey, I'm white. That is not how it works. And in fact, I know that's not how it works, because I read your book, and even just the sentence that I just read, if I read it again slow, someone, talking about yourself, Mr. Kaufmann, someone who is a quarter Latino, a quarter Chinese, but is considered white by most people. Now, even that, I paused and said, uh-oh, that to me sounds like there are some times when you are not accepted as white. Is that true?
I mean, I might be in a room with people who are all white British, and I would be different from them, and that I think that would be recognized. But, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about not being recognized as white. Maybe when I inform them of my background, then maybe, okay, you're mixed. Then there's a different vibe.
I'm not laughing at you, sir. It's just, wow, I have heard that before. If you can recall, like a time where this has happened, where, to your view, you think maybe everyone there, they just assumed, oh, maybe he's born here or someplace else, but he's definitely white. And then you tell them, like, I'm a quarter Latino, quarter Chinese, and all the rest of it. Whoa! And it, like, can you kind of describe what changes when they hear that information?
I just they find it interesting. I don't think much changes in terms of the interaction. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting factoid. That's probably it.
I generally, since we're just audio and such, I encourage our listeners, like, man, if you have not seen Mr. Kaufmann, go take a gander and see. You've heard his voice for a few minutes, so his last name, I'll spell it out for you: Kaufmann. Take a gander and see. Would you, if you just passed him on the streets of London, hey, how you doing, blah, blah, would you think he's a white person? White other. You saw him in Canada. Would you, he's right here, one of us. He's with us. No problem. 51st state. Or would you, I don't know. Take a gander. Maybe you can write it down. Let us know. When you talk about growing up in Canada, did you grow up in a predominantly white area, or were there lots of non-white people in the region that you grew up?
In the region there were, but not in the area I was in. So yeah, I mean, I'd say there would have been a distinction between sort of white Anglo-Protestant, which was the majority, and myself. So I was certainly outside of that. So that would have been a difference, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in Seattle, so I'm closer to Vancouver. Were you close to that part, or are you closer to like the
Yeah,
Toronto?
Vancouver.
Oh, okay, okay. Ooh, they do not have a lot of dark people. Is that true? They don't have too many
No,
dark.
but they have a lot of Chinese and quite a few Indian.
Okay, okay. And this your like formative years were in this region of Canada?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you go to like a predominantly white school or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was like 99% or 98% white. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So at this time, were you accepted as a white person? You're thought of as a white Canadian then?
Yeah, but I think there's white and then there's WASP, right? So I wasn't a WASP. So that, you're outside the WASP tent, but you're inside the white tent. I think that's as crude as I can put it. So a bit like the way the U.S. might have been, let's say, in the year, when Mad Men was around, like 1960. that kind of world, more like that world.
So you felt you were accepted as white, just not the most powerful whites.
Yeah, ethnic outsider, but not racial outsider. So, WASP as the ethnic category where like 3/4 of people were a member of that. And then there would be another 20 or whatever percent of, kind of like white European, which, or broadly speaking, was where I was.
Were there any times that you remember not being accepted as a white person?
Not as a white person. I mean, I sort of, what's the word? Disagree with the way this is used in critical race theory. That people weren't accepted as white. I mean, people were accepted as white, but not as WASP. So you're outside the ethnic majority, but inside the racial majority. I think that's probably the best way to think about it.
Well, that's not my view, because that does happen where you do have people who sometimes they are not accepted as white. Depending on if you go to different parts of the world, or just depending if you talk to a different white person, where that does happen, where they do not accept you as a white person, just on whatever basis.
But I guess the question is, are they not accepting you as a member of their group, or not accepting that you're white? Like, they may say you're a white person, but you're outside my group. I don't think we should just collapse those two things together. I think it's misleading. That's the way I would, I think, to be empirically accurate. So, for example, in the U.S., my view is that Jews and Catholics were, they were seen as white, but they were not, in my view, legally they were white, but they were not inside the majority group when it came to getting a job in a white shoe law firm, for example. So there are ethnic distinctions which are not the same as racial distinctions.
Individuals classified as white, certainly they argue with one another, fight with one another, can mistreat one another, but I have seen it happen where sometimes some folks, maybe you get accepted as white, and then sometimes, no, you are not accepted as white. We've talked to some folks where that sort of thing happens. Racially ambiguous, you might call them. I've even talked to some folks where they've said here in the States they are not accepted as white. They've gone to Brazil or other places, and they do get accepted as white. So we just have a different view on that one. But I have seen.
But that's a different question. You see, people who have some racial diversity, right, in their background.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said, sir.
I know, but I
for
think that's
whatever
different
reason,
from an Irish.
Hang on, whatever. Because I didn't even mention Irish. Hang on a second now. Wait a minute.
Right.
Don't put words in my mouth. Don't accuse me of saying for whatever reason. I didn't even give an explanation for whatever reason. It could be exactly what you said. You just happen to mention I'm a quarter Latino. I have seen with my own eyes that can be enough for some white people to say, "Oh, you are not white, Mr. Kaufmann," and that's it. I have seen that. That does happen. As I said, they have whole books like that, white by law. That does happen.
Oh, that's totally right. I don't disagree with that at all.
Okay, gotcha. Let's see. I got the times you already told us where you think you're generally accepted as a white person. When you were growing up in Canada, I even have to keep that in mind because you're in London now. That's big world. So growing up in Western Canada at that, did you hear like racist jokes? Like, was racism practiced around you growing up in this kind of super white enclave?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there were racist jokes. Does that mean most people were telling them no? Did they get told yes at certain times and places? I think, like a lot of parts of the world, that's declined over time. But did it happen? Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, just in the interest, racist jokes being one of my favorite subject matters, I would strongly push back on the decline. My goodness, they have data that shows racist jokes, at least here in the States, they are searched on par with the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm sure you know who they are. So I don't know. I don't know if they've declined too much. But I ask our guests, like, man, forgive the pun, but you can humor me for springtime and the clock's moving forward and all that. Do you happen to remember like one of these jokes that you heard growing up, one of the racist jokes growing up in Canada?
Boy. Just comments mostly, I suppose, about mainly targeted at Chinese and people from India. Wow. Okay. Not any against black people, which, I mean, maybe because that wasn't a group that was there in any large numbers.
Okay, Chinese. Indian.
But I do think the decline is very real, and there's lots of survey data to show it. Intermarriage, for example, or willingness to have a boss of a different race, or I just think it's Britain is a country, for example, where they used to have soccer games. Soccer's the main sport here. They used to throw bananas at black players in the 1980s. That's sort of how late it was. So the 1980s. Early mid 1980s, making monkey noises. That was happening as late as then. I mean, so I'm serious. Actually,
I know. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that 2 times inappropriate laughter. I'm sorry. I totally believe you, Mr. Kaufmann. We've been studying racism in the UK in our book club, and so they've been talking about the teddy boys and the chavs. We've been studying all that, so I have seen the images, sir, and even that soccer hooliganism that has spiraled right on into the 21st century with them throwing bananas and like they're talking about Obama over here right now, in fact. But that has carried on. I don't think that is a relic of the 1980s. Yeah, I mean, I don't live on that side of the world.
Oh, no, I think it's basically gone. But it was, I think that's why I think we have to recognize these things were there and are basically gone. So I just think if you were measuring these things, it's fairly clear there's been a huge change. That's not to say there's no racism at all, but I think you can't doubt that there's been a massive change.
I do doubt that. Again, I'm just going back to the racist jokes. The soccer, I haven't been to London and I don't really watch football like that. But the racist jokes, I do. And I know they have books that are published and the data on that no, still going strong. White people and the racist jokes, woo! One of the greatest pastimes in the known universe. I've seen zero evidence of decline. Zero. And I would even look at someone strange for even suggesting such a thing. Like, I don't know where you live or even what studies you have conducted. Any hoodles. Let's see. For this book, I guess, Whiteshift, let me make sure I give the full title. And again, this is not Mr. Kaufmann's most recent work, prolific writer. This is kind of old now. 2018, Whiteshift, Immigration, Populism, and the Future of White Majorities. What was your kind of purpose for writing this book, Whiteshift?
Well, we've had Trump and Brexit, and everyone was talking about this question. So this is 200,000 words. It's hundreds of charts. It's all based on survey research, trying to explain the phenomenon. So that people were claiming this was about economics. The poorer people were voting for populism. That was one argument, and actually, if you look at the data, that actually wasn't borne out. It may look on a map like the poorer parts of Ohio, for example, were supporting Donald Trump, but that's because, if you actually look at the kinds of voters that are in those places, there's fewer ethnic minorities, it's fewer young people, fewer people with degrees. Once you screen all that out, then that explanation goes away. So, yeah, there's a whole debate in political science as to what explains the rise of populism. So I was interested in that economic explanation versus the more cultural one, and I thought the cultural one is the stronger explanation. So, yeah, that's the context.
Explaining the context of populism, and this is mid-2010s, after the triumph of Donald Trump and Brexit, all the rest of it. And that's another one of those terms that I don't use that often, although I hear others use it on a regular basis. When you say populism, and this is another one that I'll request so that we don't get lost in academic jargon, when you say populism, if you could explain that to us like we're seven, what do you mean when you say populism?
All right, really crudely, against elites or anti-elitism.
Anti-elitism. Now that is interesting, because it seems like for both of the phenomenon that you just mentioned, UK election of Trump, a lot of that seemed very tied to race, especially, my goodness, we had that fella, I think I already mentioned him one time, that fellow was in office before Trump, and it seemed like so much of his campaign was that dude wasn't even a U.S. citizen. He came in and messed up everything, and still, I just said it about the monkeys. He's been gone 10 years, and he's still complaining and calling him a monkey, like we heard before. It seems like the populism thing might even be a synonym for racism. Am I being crude and accurate?
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I mean, I think that it depends on where we're talking about. I mean, there are times when populism is heavily tied to racism. So George Wallace, for example, in his segregationist candidacy, third-party candidacy in 1968, I think there you'd have a good case. But I think when we're looking at national populism in the West, I think what this is, I think also it's important. I mean, I would distinguish between fear and hatred or superiority towards outgroups, which is racism, from attachment to own group, which I don't think is racism, unless it becomes about race purity, for example, opposition to intermarriage. But I think these are different things, and I think the national populism is more about loss of the familiar, loss of attachment, rather than hatred of outgroups. It's not to say there isn't any element of hatred of outgroups, which there definitely is. So that isn't part of the mix, absolutely.
When you say that, you mean the racism?
Yeah, racism, sometimes religious hatred.
That's not what I'm talking about when I say racism. I just want to be clear.
Sure. But I think that, for example, that people would draw, there would be a distinction made, for example, between Muslim and non-Muslim immigrants of the same color, for example, from South Asia. I think that's important. I also think, there was a lot of antagonism to East Europeans in Britain when they came over in large numbers in them starting around 2000s, in the early 2000s. So this is very much a white group. I don't think it's as simple as just talking about racism, actually. I think that sort of obscures more than it illuminates in many cases.
Well, people generally obscure talking about the racism. So I want to bring out one of the major points that I got from your book. You can let me know if I'm wrong. One of the major points seems to be, with all of the demographic change in the world, this is not something limited to UK or the States, in the world in terms of white people. And oh man, as you said, we're not going to be majority population wise in many of these different parts of the world, and how white people are responding to all of that. One of the major points seems to be, one of the ways that this could go, and you're kind of, pitching around some ideas, who can really read the future, but one of your ideas is, one of the ways that this could look is having individuals like yourself, you say white other, quarter Latino, a little bit Jewish, we could end up just being accepted as white. And so you end up with all of these, as you call them, mixed whites, who end up being brought into this umbrella of white people. And that's just how we proceed to make sure that we still have white people. That seems to be one of the main points of the book. Did I misread that?
No, that's right. I think that, in 100 years, or, if you run these projections forward based on current rates of mixing, by the end of the century, it's like 30% mixed. By 2150, it's 75%. That's in Britain, let's say Britain and the U.S. So that will be the majority. Now, in practice, how they identify is quite important, and there's been quite a bit of research on that. But also, if we look at the experience of the past, where there has been large-scale mixing in certain societies, like Turkey, which was kind of a melting pot. Hungary was another. People will tend to coalesce around certain myths and memories. I think that's sort of the way I read it going forward. Will be this kind of a melting pot process.
I guess one I wanted to ask, we've already had a lot of mixing. Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson and Strom Thurmond. This has been all over the world that we've had this mixing, so-called white people engaging in sexual activity and producing children with non-white people. That's been going on like forever. So I don't really know how what's happening now is that much different from what's gone on for centuries, really. And even what I said before, these racial classifications are total slop. It is whatever white other and all that. This is not science at all. This is what the most powerful white people, this is what they say anyway. That's why I just said that book, White by Law, where they have Supreme Court cases, and they didn't say this is how we scientifically determine what it means to be white. They said white people know what it means to be a white person. We just make it up as we go. So I don't really see how this is that much different from what it's been all along. We just make up who's going to be a white person, and as long as we dominate the people we say are not white, we're in charge. Am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's differences just even demographically. The amount of south to north migration has really taken off greatly since just in the past few decades. I think that is a real thing. So there's, yes, there was always mixing, but the numbers were a lot smaller. Minorities, Europe was essentially racially homogenous with very few exceptions up until certainly post-Second World War. I mean, with some small, very, very tiny exceptions. So I'd say the scale is much larger, number one, of that racial contact and mixing. I mean, there were plenty of stories you'll hear of, like some U.S. military going, some soldiers, there'd be some black soldiers, they would go into an English town and there would be, there's a story I know from a relative, from my wife's family. People would climb telephone poles to see black people just to get a look. That's how rare it was in the 50s and 60s and in much of provincial England. So yeah, it was just a different world in terms of the numbers. And then otherwise, yeah, these classifications, I don't think this is some kind of white plot. I think these are negotiated by in society, and those negotiations can then affect the administrative categories. The old one-drop rule, for example, is no longer operating. I just think these are kind of categories change over time somewhat. So yeah, I just think you can get an evolution of categories as society changes. I do think the categories have some social reality, regardless of the DNA genetics, but just in terms of how people treat each other. So, in Brazil, as you mentioned, Brazil, most whites in Brazil have some black or indigenous or background. Similarly, in a place like Bermuda, it's like 40% black, 40% white, 20% mixed, but the whites all have some black and the black all have some whites. And so part of this is how the boundaries are negotiated socially and how people identify.
I cannot say enough for particularly non-white people who are listening. All of that, when they start, especially anyone, white, non-white, when they start putting percentages like 40% black and all of that is nonsense. All of that is suggesting that there's something, as even used the term in his book, as an unmixed white person. All of that is nonsense. And I'm not trying to insult you personally, but I'm just saying all of that is nonsense. And thank you for letting me finish. There's no scientific basis for a pure white person. There's no scientific basis for a pure black person. If he can give us the science for that, that's great. I agree with the component that because we are in a system of white supremacy, yes, these racial classifications have real world consequences. I said, hey, people go to court over being accepted as a white person, all the rest of it. Absolutely. But there is no such thing as I'm 40% black and 2%. We just said white people and non-white people have been mixing for centuries. When you brought up that aspect about Brazil, yes, that is true. We still have a system of white supremacy in Brazil, and even people classified as white in Brazil. We have been talking about them quite a bit. Right. I'm pulling back just because I don't want to bog down on this point. I'm sure you disagree. We'll get to some of this as we get to the book specifically. I have a question about the book in general because of some of the different points that you raised. One of them being that, I guess maybe you can explain it to us. Explain it to us for the listeners. Maybe they'll grasp it immediately. Why whiteness is mostly about identity, not power. Let me make sure. I'm going to read it one more time, Mr. Kaufmann, and then you can. I'm going to shut up. Take it away. For listeners, why whiteness, and he has it in all caps in the book when he goes to give his explanation, why whiteness is mostly about identity, not power. Give us the explanation, Mr. Kaufmann.
Well, if you look at people who, essentially there are people who identify with their group, whether it be an ethnic group or a racial group, and people who identify less strongly with that. That's true within, Asians, Hispanics, blacks, whites. In any case, you find stronger and weaker identification. If you strongly identify with a subcategory like Irish or Italian, then that is by far and away the strongest predictor of identifying strongly as white. It's not whether you're a Republican or Democrat, which is a relatively weak effect. So really what this is, it's a bit like some people identify with the extended family, some don't. It's just a particular identification. And, I'm seeing that as a sort of attachment. Some people are attached to that, some are not. The power component, I think, I know, again, again, we would need to see evidence. Like, what would it take for you to accept that the power theory doesn't explain the identification? I'm trying to understand how it could possibly be disproved. It just seems like a prior and a premise that can't be falsified. It would be if I said, well...
Why do you think that is, though? That it seems like a prior that white white identity is about power that can't be disproven. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's an ideological belief that is just cannot. No one can falsify that for somebody who believes in that theory. It's just I'd see it as an ideology. It'd be a bit like I'd say, well, anti-Catholicism is baked into American society. It's always there, and it can never go away, right? So I think you could make the same argument, or anti-Semitism, or anything, but I think I would want to see, in fact, evidence, opinion survey data over time, or something much harder and measurable before I'm going to believe that. Whereas all the hard measurable stuff shows, in fact, just like anti-Catholicism declined and anti-Semitism declined, and similarly, I would argue anti-blackness declined. So, I mean, that may be heresy, but again, if you're going to argue against that position, you'd need to show me some kind of evidence. So I'm not persuaded by that it's just about power. So one of the arguments, for example, is that, Protestants accepted Jews and Catholics because they wanted.
Can we hang on a second, Mr.? I should have done this at the beginning because you keep deviating to religion. The system. When I ask you about white identity, I would prefer if you not deviate to religion, because that's not the same thing, like, at all. In my view, it's not even close. If this one, can you explain it to us like we are seven, so we can get right to the core? I'm gonna even say the sentence again or fragment for our listeners. Mm-hmm. Why whiteness is mostly about identity, not power. Explain this one to us like we're seven.
Yeah, just that any kind of racial identity is mainly about people having affection for the symbols, collective memory of their particular group. I think that's what drives it. I think the survey data shows that. I think it's the same within every race. And again, accepting absolutely that races are not scientific, but socially real, not scientifically real, but still, I think this is principally what's driving it, not some sort of plot to have power over another group and extract resources and things from that. I think that can happen. It has happened in the past, absolutely. I think that's declined substantially. I don't think that's the main motivation for national populism, for example, is somehow to maintain a power structure. I just think that's not actually what's driving it. It's about loss of the familiar, disorientation based upon what people knew growing up. It's not. So that's where I guess I get off the train in terms of the critical race theory. I should say I probably only got about 5 minutes left. So yeah, if there's anything else you want to get to, just let me know.
We have a few. Maybe you can do like 10 minutes. We have a number of, and see, because you deviated on the religion thing quite a bit. Let's see, let me get in as many as I can. One, the beige power paradox. If whiteness is merely an identity and not a global system of power to dominate non-white people, why does the white minority in South Africa still control the water, land, and security might? And how does a beige majority, as you say, in the U.S., solve the problem of white supremacy?
Well, I mean, I think in South Africa, there's no, obviously politically, you have a different racial party in power than was there in the past. There's no doubt that politically power has flowed from whites to blacks. You can talk about the economy, but the economy is driven by many things, including capital, business formation, so
water.
Well, yeah. I mean, unless you're going to expropriate land, that's a whole conversation. I think that's a disaster economically. We've seen that in Zimbabwe. But in any case, I'd say that this is not to do with power. The economic inequality, I don't ascribe that to some kind of political power. In fact, South Africa is a good case. It shows you can change the political power, and it's not going to change economic inequality. So I don't think these two things follow from each other. They can follow from each other, obviously. During the apartheid era, then those two things were connected. I don't see them as connected there now.
Oh, okay. We got that one. I would submit humbly, if we control the water, we are in charge. All areas, we have the water. Let's see. The make sure which one. Woo, trying to make sure which ones I get. You talk about with the so-called mixed whites, and that's in quotes for listeners, that this group, if they can properly assimilate white values, then they can be accepted and be under the so-called white umbrella, accepted as a white person, white man, white woman, perhaps like yourself. What then do you make of, I guess, either side of the pond, Barack Obama or Meghan Markle? You could take either one. They both, I think, have white genetic material, and Barack Obama subjected to historic level of death threats. Meghan Markle, it was not about culture. It was not about we don't have things in common. It was about her skin color, and she has too much melanin. In fact, they removed security protection for Meghan Markle on the basis of her not being white, too dark. Prince Andrew, an accused child molester, just lost his protections very recently. What are we to make of this?
Well, I mean, let's not forget that, Barack Obama was elected president of the U.S. So, I mean, yeah, you can point to a few crazies on Twitter, but, the reality is...
Hold on, sir. Sir. We said a historic level of death threats, not a few crazies on Twitter.
Yeah, sure, but we're talking about a very tiny number of insane people, whereas the reality is, Obama did a lot better amongst white voters than Hillary Clinton. So I mean, I just think you're being quite partial in the evidence you're looking at, not systematic.
So what does that mean? Did Obama receive a historic number of death threats? Is that true?
Yeah, well,
okay.
I assume it's true. I haven't seen the I trust you on that, but look, a few, a number of death threats is one thing, but a number of votes, which is millions.
Most white people didn't vote for Obama in either election, 2008 or 2012. Why would that make me think that whites have changed their views on non-white people? And he has a white parent.
I just think if Obama was running in 1960 or 1970, I mean, there's just no way, right? So I just think there's been a change. I just don't see how that's arguable.
Wait a minute. You said the evidence, you think there's been a change in white people. How would you support that there's been a change with regards to how white people see black people when all of the evidence shows the so-called segregation in terms of white people living around non-white people, black people in particular? It has increased over the last 60 years, not gone down. What do you make of that?
Well, black-white segregation has decreased,
No, it has not. No, it has not.
Okay, well, that's an easy test, right? So if you look that, ask ChatGPT and put it in, and that's a good test.
I don't need to ask a chatbot, sir. They have decades of data on this. In fact, they paused for the Brown versus Board of Education 60-year, I'm not going to say anniversary because it's so tacky to lament. We have gone backwards. Are you saying that that's false? It's gotten better?
Yeah, I am saying that's false. And I'm saying that
and give us the data again. Did you say you got your data from the chatbot? Is that what you said?
No, but if you take segregation, blacks...
Where did you get your data from? Stop. Where did you get your data from that it's improved?
From academic literature, from
where?
Anyone
Give us a source.
Oh, if you look at William Fry on segregation, if you look at his work, anybody, Doug Massey on segregation.
I've interviewed Doug Massey. I do not recall him telling us anything about so-called In fact, Doug Massey gave us racist jokes about how the white bank employees exploited black people for the 2008 financial crisis that you say that didn't have any real impact on white people's voting and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so he's in your camp anyway, but I mean, if you look at,
I don't have a camp.
No, but he's going to look at the data, and there's no question that the black concentration areas, there have been more migration out of that into more mixed suburbs, more mixed areas. So it's just not the same as it was. Segregation has declined black and white. Now, it's different with Latino and Asian. That's more or less a flat picture. There hasn't been much change there, and there is more class-based segregation. But I just think, honestly, really, I mean, we have to accept there's been improvement in a lot of these metrics, even if it's not ideally where we want to be. But anyway,
before you go, then, let me get one more quick question in, Mr. Kaufmann, because you didn't. Matter of fact, you left early. Remember, you weren't even here correctly. We were here on time, and you signed out because you got confused. So give us our 2 minutes, because we could have started on time. I was here and ready. All right. So get our last question. You talk about the 1980s, particularly for Europe. Make sure I preface this being a key spot for so-called populist rise in sentiment, particularly because immigration was coming, large numbers of black people coming, and you said it hadn't even been black people like that before. People would get up on the telephone pole, look, a Negro's coming. How do you explain 1964? Peter Griffith won an election, your chunk of the world. His slogan was, if you want a nigger for a neighbor, vote for labor. This was 20 years before you say the rise kicked off. And this was 1964 when he won his election using that slogan. 1962, 1968, 1971, you have immigration acts where it is white only for Britain. How do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it wasn't white only, but that's a separate point. You're right about the slogan that you just mentioned, and so that's now, of course, that's happening in one of the very tiny number of spots where you had a sufficient black population. Where I'm talking about the vast majority of England where this was scarcely known. So yeah, in the
what was scarcely known,
where you had significant immigration. That you wouldn't see black people. And so what I'm saying is now you would. But the point here is that, and then, of course, what's interesting about that is, of course, you would never get a politician campaigning like that today in Britain. It just shows, again, the progress that's been made. Again, making my point, as I said, the kind of racism, the open racism that used to exist, saying the football terraces or the soccer matches, that sort of stuff up until the 80s. So there has been big progress made. I just want to end with that. And I just don't think seeing things as always never changing is productive for anybody. But people are allowed to disagree and let the debate continue. That's all I can say. But I
do want to make sure that I say before you exit, I don't know if this book is a part of what you're required to write as a part of your acceptance as a white person, but it is a very dishonest book in so many different ways, woo! But this might be what is required of you to practice white supremacy racism. At any rate, see, I thought you had to leave. He was going to stay to overtalk me and interrupt me. I had quotes ready to roll, sir, for all the nonsense that you have in this book. Oh my God. If you want to stay on the slide, because I've seen that from white people before, oh my God, please stay. We have questions for, in fact, the non-white male in Norway, homogenous area. You talked about Anders Breivik and conveniently minimize. Isn't that one of the words I use all the time? Minimize. Minimized all of the white terrorist violence in Norway that happened years before Anders Breivik, Benjamin Hermansen. We just talked. I didn't even know who that was. I will get for accuracy. It was give the years again, 1962, 1968, and 1971, the Immigration Acts, they were to restrict non-white entry. Now, they did allow some non-white people, but they have signs up saying, white only. Keep Britain white. I mean, dang, why would one think it was no non-white people? This is the same era for people reading in the book club where they were talking about we're going to go nigger hunting. Get out of here. In fact, anyone telling me, I was going to start this and tell him the same thing I said with Dorothy Roberts, like, oh my God, you have such a dishonest book. Do you know how loathsome and repugnant that is? I had to read 2 super dishonest books in a row, and even the theme. What is the theme with these 2 dishonest books? Dorothy Roberts, The Mixed Marriage Project, Whiteshift, Eric Kaufmann, and it's even the same subject matter because they're both talking about, hey, maybe if the non-white people, if we can produce offspring and get enough, we can get out of here. Oh my God. It's so much nonsense in the book. I had to email Dr. Paul Thomas, who was from Norway. He wrote the book Too Black to Be Here, to tell him, oh my God, this book is gross and disgusting. Like, oh, and dishonest. That was what I said repeatedly. This book is so dishonest. One, we're in a system of white supremacy racism. So we've made progress and all that. Get out of here. Like, what are you in fact, I was even going to go and get the data to show him, like, don't lie to me about the segregation. I was like, Democracy Now!, my BFF Amy Goodman, they did a whole tacky 60-minute program where they talked about, like I said, for the 60-year anniversary, Brown v. Board of Education. In fact, it's been so much time, they've done the 70-year tacky anniversary and said the same thing. Oh my God, the segregation is worse now than it was back then. Yep, forget all that. Melissa Harris Perry, her now defunct show on MSNBC, they did a segment in 2014. She had a professor on from Emory University. And she said, hey, we went around and did our study and asked to white people, everything being equal, schools, no crime, Leroy not going to break in your car, loot your barbecue pit, nothing like that. Good schools, great air, solar panels, everything you can think, all the amenities you would want, great libraries and, whatever. No crime, already said that, said twice. But there are some niggers. They didn't even say this is like a majority Nigra area, nothing like that. But just, it's a few Jamal, Devontae. You stop right there. And this was not like no rowdy Elijah Muhammad publication. This was not Muhammad Speaks. This was not Gus T's Neely Fuller Jr. This was Melissa Harris Perry, who does have a white parent. But she and her guest, it sounded like you said, white people don't want to live next to black people. And all the guests could say was, yep. She didn't say, oh, we didn't make so much progress. No, white people do not want to live next to black people. Period. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I would have thought, wait, and I did for about 3 pages until he put, and I'm so glad. That's one thing I can say. I'm so glad he put that at the beginning of the book. I'm a quarter Latino and all this. And then I went and looked at the picture and I said, go look at the picture. Go look at the picture. Eric Kaufmann, Kaufmann. Go look at the picture. Do you think he would be accepted as white? I would not be stunned if there's some white people, whatever. White people, he's in London now. I wouldn't be shocked if he moves to Canada. I wouldn't be shocked if they still say he's a white person. Here, come to the States, Brazil, wherever. I know there are some white people, just from what he said, most is not all. He said most of the time he's accepted as a white person. I said, your book is not even on it. And anybody telling me we've made progress on racist jokes. Okay. Anyway, the joke is you telling us that you wrote a serious book about racism. That is a racist joke. Again, and the whole thesis of the book is accept me on the team. That's how I process this. Accept me on the team. I will be your best advocate. White people are not racist. You heard everything. We have made lots of progress. It was only a small number of no-count idiots and crazies. Dr. Welsing talked about that exactly. Do not substitute the word crazy for racist. Do not call a race soldier crazy for practicing racism. But all that minimizing, we've made progress, that's what I would expect a race soldier to say. Refinement, get us confused, ain't no racism. That's what I would expect. I want to be a member of the white race. That's what I would expect you to do. I had that on my list too. Like, have you had to practice racism? I had so many questions. I should have asked that one early. Have you had to practice racism? Can you think of a time where you've practiced racism? Other than writing this book to lie and suggest that white people are less racist. Oh, even he said he advocates in the book that white people should be able to have white pride without being penalized. That's what I mean. Like, you have not written a serious book. You are not serious. I hope that came through in his performance with us for the hour or so, but you are not serious. You want to be accepted as a white person. I get it. If I could, I would probably be trying to do that too. But I mean, gee, white people ought to not be beaten up and penalized for being proud of being white. What universe do you really? What loony bin do you live in? Do I need to send some sweet potato pie to the funny farm? White people are not. Who punishes white people for being proud of being white? Please go bop President Trump upside the head and Elon Musk, because he's been on that white people are victims in South Africa. Like, right now, you have been real slack on your duties. But whoever it is that punishes white people for bragging, boasting about being white, I'm white and proud, get on your job. You have been on your lazy hind parts for a minute. Get it. It's a whole lot of white people. You need to go upside their head or get fired. What happens to them? What's the punishment for the white people who brag? I'm proud. I'm white and proud. What's the punishment? I had a lot of questions because it's so much like nonsense. I can't even say enough. All of that unmixed whites mixed, that is nonsense to the highest degree. Jesus Christ. We had Ian Haney Lopez on this program. That's serious scholarship. White by law. They did not say, we recognize you as white because you got 40% white and 50% white, or you 20% That's not what they said. The Supreme Court justices, all white, they said, we know white people know a white person when we see a white person. Case closed. That's what, like, I'm not making it up. That's not Gus paraphrasing, using my Negro brain. That's what they said. We make it up as we go. We'll tell you when we see a white person. We might change it tomorrow if we want to. That's what it is. And you're going to come and tell unmixed white? That right? You are not serious at all. You accept me as a white person. I'll say whatever I need. I'll tell whatever lies I need to. Accept me as a white person. Racism is on the decline. It was only a few white people who were mad at Obama. Even that, y'all been in the States. Y'all heard Dr. Any students of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing to hear that? It was a small number of crazies who were attacked. I don't care what you think about Obama. I know there's tons of black people. I hate Obama, but I remember what he said about black males and Kamala Harris. That said, are we in a system of white supremacy, racism, or not? Same question I asked him. Did he get a historic number of death threats or not? Are we in the Trump era? Is that a result of we got that nigger in the white? Come on, man. Come on. Not serious. That was one. Have you practiced racism other than writing this book? other than writing this book. He even said that a few times. He talked about San Francisco being but he talked about Norman Mailer being a white man who is not racist. Like, he calls out white people by name that he thinks are not racist. Like, are you out of your mind? James Baldwin wrote a whole report about Norman Mailer being racist. Like, what? Oh my God. But again, thank you for telling us at the beginning of the book. A quarter Latino. That's what I'm saying. He can talk, like, I guess he thinks his readers are stupid, or maybe he wrote this book for white people. I was going to ask him that one too. Like, who did you write this book for? Was this book written for white people? Because I'm aware of some white people read this book and they're like, oh yes, we have a defender. Great. We'll accept you on the team type of thing. And it could even be whatever saying Negro. Whatever want to be Negro. We'll take your scholarship. Blah, 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 blah. I've seen that, but I have literally been in University of Washington classes, back of the bus, teaching the class. Co-host with the cows, started out in 2007 at University of Washington, but him teaching a class on racism. Asked his students to go around and identify if they are a white person or not, and then identify the other people in class. Do you think this is a white person, non-white person? Oh my gosh. It was a female. She said kind of the same thing that Mr. Kaufmann said, that I'm whatever, quarter Latino, blah, 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 whatever. But she said she's white. Same thing he did. I'm white. She didn't do the other part. She just said I'm white. We went around out loud and we got to someone else in the room and they said, I'm a white dude. And they were going around white, non-white, white, blah, blah, blah. Got to that female. And he said, non-white. And she said, well, wait a minute, I'm a white female. He said, well, you said you got that quarter Latino and all that, so that's, not white. He said, wait a minute. He didn't say another word. It would, conclusion, not white. Next. And she's still up debating. Wait a minute, you got to put me on the team. We done made progress. I don't know no racist joke. Anyway, so, and like I said, just from what he said, most of the time, the people that I think are white, like for sure, when I use the example, hey, what'd I say? Adolf and them. You going in the oven in 30 seconds unless you get you a white person. They say, I'm going to vouch for this Negro. We're not going to bake him today. I am not going to get Mr. Kaufmann. I think he had better get him a white person. Serious. What are you classified as? White? Not white. It wouldn't be that situation. I'm not going to grab nobody who says most of the time I'm accepted as white. I'm gonna do the same thing that white fella did. Get out of the way. You gonna get us all baked up. Move, Kaufman. Move. Most of the time, except what? But again, I'm so glad he put that in the book. And you might even see more of this, individuals who, that is, hey, you want to be classified as white? Hey. They had a whole movie about that at the Seattle International Film Festival last year, and it wasn't even black people. It was a non-white person, non-black female who wanted to transmogrify to being classified as white. But hey, you got to do things. What you got to do? You're going to have to mistreat non-white people. Well, I was friends with non-white people. You are going to have to mistreat non-white people. And that's what I think this book is. Because he's lying about racism. We don't need no lies about. Same thing I said to Dorothy Roberts' new book, which is pitifully similar to this one. We don't need no more lies about racism. And we certainly don't need no lies. Hey, you know how we going to get rid of racism? Look here. more of us hop in bed with white people. Like, come on, it's 2026, man. Come on, man. Don't be talking nonsense, man. Like that's I would prefer. Hey, you know how we gonna end racism? Watching Netflix. I would prefer that. Like, well, maybe they get a documentary on Dr. Welsing or something interesting. Like, I got more faith in TV watching to solve this problem than just we get a few more generations of them beige folks, man. Obama and Meghan Markle, come on, man. But again, maybe this is what you do to be classified as white. I will take a quick pause, and then we have to do this again now. When we do this on Thursday, it's going to be totally different. Why do I know it's going to be totally different? The title of the book for Thursday alone, totally different. Still talking to a white person, totally. We didn't talk to a white person today. I just want to make that clear. I am of the opinion. I looked at his picture, and based on it, quarter Latino. The people that I think of as classified as white do not say, most of the time I'm accepted as white. I view Mr. Kaufmann as a non-white person. The most I could do is maybe suspected racist if you think maybe he's a white person, and maybe, but I think victim of racism, anti-black, all the rest of it, he would like to be a race soldier. I don't think he's accepted as a white person. If it was the oven scenario, he had better grab a white person. I am not grabbing him. Most of the time I'm accepted as most of the time you're accepted as a racist. We're not going to be cool, but no, I do not think you're a white person just following logic, just following what he said. Anyway, probably going to be more individuals like this, individuals who are not white, racially ambiguous, hopeful that they can get on the team. And I mean, even that is not really new. Like, they do have the phenomenon of passing. I told you they had the movie at the film festival last year. And that's not new. They've had that for years. Langston Hughes has a poem where he wrote about this. That's why I said with the mix, none of this is new. None of this is new. We've had a system of white supremacy for a very long time. We will have to see how it goes with the demographics to see if that has an impact. But I mean, South Africa, they don't have but a teaspoon of white people, and they are still in charge. Who got the water? The man. The woman. Oscar Pistorius. He ain't even got no legs, and we got water. Quick break, and then we will be right back early at the cows. Context of white supremacy. Global system. Should have asked him if he was racist, or how he's practiced racism, since most of the time he is classified as white. What you do those times? Practice racism?
Got another term on there, VGQ. What does that mean? Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Now, that keeps you from getting into arguments with other black people, particularly on television, which I get sick of that. Black people shouting, we get into our ghetto thing. Once we get on television and get wound up, and we start all yelling at once. And the racists sit there smugly and just look. They watch the tennis match, so to speak. Right? And black people are shouting each other down, talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, and so and so and so and so, and we go into our Amos and Andy and Sapphire Act. Okay? VGQ means Victims Guaranteed Qualification. Guaranteed qualification to do what? To give your opinion on anything about race. Don't care what it is. If you're on there with Minister Farrakhan, or you on there with Mike Tyson, or you on there with Miss, what's her name, Williams, the lady that had him put in, recommended that he be put in jail, or you on there with anybody. So you don't cut the other black person down. Now, I don't even like that term brother and sister, even though it's been around for about 30 years. But I ain't going to talk about the brother here, no. See, we haven't reached that stage where we can do that. See, we got to crawl before we walk, but we don't miss any steps. Don't say you are what you're not. Don't say you feel something that you don't really feel. You don't really feel that he's a brother. I usually use the expression, I don't like anybody in here. I say that to all audiences. I haven't been taught to like anybody. I've been taught to dislike people. Been taught that. And then they're taught to dislike me, so it's just compounded disliking. I haven't even got to love yet. All right? So what we do is minimize conflict, try not to hurt each other. So a certain thing, that's what a code is for. It's a stopgap. It keeps me from saying something against you. You say, well, don't you agree with what this person just said down here on the other end and whatnot? That person has VGQ, Mr. Donahue. I keep using him because he's one of the most prominent TV people. Right? But the main thing you do is try to stay off of a radio program or TV program or even a neighborhood stage program, you might say, where you spend your time shouting back and forth at other black people. Nothing is getting done there. And when it's done on television, a lot of black people just get up from the TV set and go on in the kitchen somewhere once that shouting starts. Yeah, they get disgusted. Say, they say, oh, here we go. They started off okay, but now they're doing a job on each other, and I don't even want to hear it. So just don't do it. And you cut it off. The cutoff point is that person has victims guaranteed qualification. You spell it out what it means. Meaning the person can say anything about race that they want to, and I can say anything about it that I want to. You are guaranteed that. You earn that as a victim. Simply by being a victim. Now, if a white person says something, that's something else.
I don't know if a person who most of the time is accepted as white, that's probably something else too. Anyway, not from the chat bot. Although I will say, I have cited the chat bot, and hey, I stand by my record on that too. And you can check, what was the last time I cited the chat bot? Saturday, compensatory weekly review. I cited the chat bot when I played the report about them closing 12 schools in the greater Houston, Texas area. I cited the chat bot and I said, hey, they come up with AI slop and say all kinds of nonsense. You better, what I just said from it, where did you get this from? And that's the same thing I say to the darn bot. Where did you get this from? And I go hunt for the report, and even then, you had better check. Because sometimes they will still give you some slop, even though it's a link to it. But I read the link, and I shared the link to the Houston report, where they went to further detail, local Houston report, where they went to lots of detail about the impact of those schools closing on black people specifically. That didn't sound like no progress either. That said, Democracy Now! I'm going to just stand on my memory what I just said. Democracy Now!, April 23rd, 2014, Jim Crow in the classroom. New report finds segregation lives on in U.S. schools. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who does have a white parent, as the U.S. Supreme Court upholds a ban on affirmative action in Michigan, and the country marks 60 years since the landmark decision of Brown v. Board of Education, we look at how segregation, so-called, is still pervasive in U.S. public schools. An explosive new report. They always got them bombs. In ProPublica, finds school integration never fully occurred, and in recent decades may have even been reversed. And they've had tons. That's why I said, I'm surprised to hear anyone say the opposite, because they have so many. This is 2014. I have seen nothing that, hey, this is going the opposite direction. We getting back? No, I have seen nothing to suggest that. Everything has said, yep, getting worse. But if you would like to be, hope to be classified as white, I guess you said, hey, we are making lots of progress. And I hear lots of racists say that. We made lots of progress. That's the P word. You got to say that. We made lots of progress. We made lots of progress. We made, we would have lynched Obama in, 1960. So we made lots of progress. What in the Come on. And when you go look at the economics, ain't no progress there. They say every day, oh my Lord, the wealth inequality has gotten even worse. Oh my Lord. Progress. And the racist jokes, that was on NPR. My God, I can't go back to do everything right now, but that was on NPR if you want to go and find that one where they talked about the racist jokes. Same thing. They did not say, oh man, that's old hat. We don't do no racist jokes no more. That's, 20th century. We leave that. That's Jimmy the Greek type thing. It's new age, new era, and we about new things. We got bots and everything. We ain't about no racist. Please. Hey, the monkeys. He just put the president put the monkey. He put the. We'll be here on Thursday. I mean, man, I told you now. I said Saturday we will be here early, but I didn't know exact time because I said, man, they got to move the clocks, and then I got to check the same thing for Thursday. Now I have a few more days to adjust with the clock, but it's a different part of the world, so now I'm going to have to look again to see, are they on daylight savings time and all the rest of it. So at least as far as I can tell, it should be probably around the same time-ish, I think. 3 p.m.-ish, somewhere in there, maybe give or take an hour or so. But I'm no fan of the early broadcast. When I say our time is 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So anything that is not in that time slot, I'm no fan of. Like, I'm in a routine. We've been in that time slot for years. So, and particularly early morning where I have to be up like today, a.m. or not a.m. I guess it was noon, but still, that's a.m. because they have to be on and all that stuff. Anything like that, like, oh God, I'm not a fan. Throws off my whole routine. And anyway, I want to make sure I get in the questions from Dr. Thomas because he submitted a number of questions, and I told him what a lame book this was in so many different ways. The questions that he shared that I was going to ask as well. He wrote, number one, on ascription and racial hierarchy, Kaufmann suggests that white ethnic identity has been delegitimized in ways that other identities haven't. That's what I said about, he said, you can't brag and say, I'm white and I'm proud. Is he arguing for symmetry between white identity politics and the identity politics of racialized minorities, non-white people? If not, how does he distinguish between them? And what role does power and historical oppression play in that distinction? He said white identity is not about power, so whatever. 2, structural versus cultural explanations. The book often emphasizes cultural and demographic factors over structural racism in explaining racial inequality. How does he respond to critics who argue this downplays the ongoing impact of the system of white supremacy in areas like housing, employment, and criminal justice? He just said we've made progress. Like lots more black people live around white people, and I don't know about the employment part. I didn't hear him say we've made progress there. But I mean, hey, at least we're living around white people. So, and if we have a little bit more sex with them, everything will work itself out, I guess. We made progress. They're not telling racist jokes no more, so we should be making progress. He says on the new cultural left and racial justice, he's critical of progressive approaches to race and diversity. What specifically does he see as problematic about contemporary anti-racist movements, and how would he address the racial inequalities those movements are trying to tackle? That's in one of his more recent books. Let me see if I can give you the title of it. It is The Third Awakening, a 12-point plan for rolling back progressive extremism. Now, I guess he figures we've made so much progress, we don't need to roll back Anders Breivik, all of the race soldiers who were terrorizing Meghan Markle. We don't need to do anything about that. We need to do something about and again, I say this is required, or what he thinks he has to do to be accepted as a white person. You consistently write things that I'm advocating for white people. I don't know who's beating up on white people, but I'm an advocate for white people, and I'm against all the wokeness because it's called the Third Awakening, AWOKENING. Kening, third awakening. So I write all this stuff, and yeah, I'm against all the diversity and all that, y'all against race and boo, and we've made progress, and let's do it, and let's be proud to be white, and yeah, I'm proud to be white. And he even says that in the book. He says for these people like himself, racially ambiguous, hopefully to be white, you can be proud of white traditions. That was another one I was going to ask him. What traditions are there, white traditions are there, that are not connected to mistreatment of non-white people, practice of racism? Give us one or two, or as many as you can, really. But what parts of white culture, white traditions can we celebrate has nothing to do with mistreating non-white people? Give us one. I'm even trying to think myself, like, Santa Claus? And then I had to snatch that one back. I said, oh no, they got old short Pete, like, I can't really give me that back, give me that. And even if they didn't have old nigger Pete, put a black Santa Claus out there if you want to and see what happens. Now sometimes they might not say anything, they might be refined and wait till they get home. I have heard in the 21st century, I have heard and seen that cause a kerfuffle. But even if it doesn't, like I said, we still got short Pete that we ain't got rid of. So, but if you all think of one, a so-called white tradition, bit of white culture, ain't got nothing to do with terrorizing. I was going to think, what about the diamond ring? I was like, oh, wait a minute. The black people, you had to chop the fingers off to get the diamond. Yeah, scratch that one. You scratch that one. Let's see. I don't know. I'm gonna think on it. I'm gonna think. That was when I was gonna ask Mr. Kaufmann, but if you all, you think of one. I was gonna say, I almost goofed up and said entertainment. Like, Jesus Christ, the minstrel shows and Cat Williams. Like, man, if you think of one, a bit of white culture, any white tradition that does not have anything to do directly, indirect. Most of it is pretty direct, but if you can think of one that does not have anything to do, mistreatment of non-white people, exploiting non-white people, messing up. We didn't have to steal a whole lot of stuff from them in order to carry out all these rituals and things. None of that. This is just good old fun in the name of us being white people. Nothing to do with messing over non-white people. If you can think of something, let us know. Yeah, I ain't got it. Anyway, I'll think on it a little bit more and let you know. Any hoodles. We will for sure be here on Thursday, 8 p.m. I believe we might have two programs on Thursday because we might have that early broadcast and then Neutralizing Workplace Racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. The book club, normal time, thankfully, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That's Dr. Colin Anthony Beckles, which I really appreciate talking to this, for me, he would be a victim of white supremacy who is very anti-black and hopeful of being accepted as a white person. That said, but not white. I do not think he would be accepted as a white person. I don't do the classifying. More powerful white people than myself would know. But talking to him, wow, I'm glad we are reading Dr. Colin Anthony Beckles' dissertation at this moment, where he goes into so much detail about the flagrant white terrorism that's where we're at right now is the UK, although he talks about racism in the UK, Jamaica, and the US against black book stores, but it's so comprehensive, and he talked about the nigger hunting squads that they had in the UK. Now, does that sound like white culture that has nothing to do with mistreating non-white people? I guess you can say, hey, they had nigger hunting squads in the 60s, so we've made a lot of progress from that time to now. I guess you could say that. Like, I don't know. They did kill Mark Duggan. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Anyway, but that's Friday. Jamaica is coming up. I'm so excited. Walter Rodney, the importance of, I can't say enough, the importance of reading, and particularly because you have non-white people who write inaccurate books like this. It might be commissioned by white people. Even you can look at this. Let me give you Mr. Kaufmann. When I said this dude is a prolific writer, like, okay, Whiteshift, I said that came out in 2018. The Awakening, that's 2024. Taboo, How Making Race Sacred Produced a Cultural Revolution, that's 2024. 2 books the same year. Changing Places, that's 2014. Whether the Child Causes Consequences of Low Fertility, always about the white genetic annihilation, but that's 2013. Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth? Demography and Politics in the 21st Century. Wow, the focus on the fertility thing. What is up with that? Let's see. We got The Orange Order, Northern Irish History. Seems like that one might not be. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not the white fertility issues, maybe. I'm not sure. And then Unionism and Orangism in Northern Ireland since 1945. I'd have to see though. When then, wait a minute, got one more. The Rise and Fall of Anglo-America. This is 2004. All these, Eric Kaufmann. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that 9? Wow, that is a lot. Oh, wait a minute, that's 8? Yeah, it's right the first time. 9 different books. 9 different books, and only 2 of these, it looks like, have nothing to do with racism, white supremacy. And even those 2, it just doesn't seem as flagrant. I would have to read them to pick it out and, get into the meat and potatoes of it all. But the rest of these, all of this work about white supremacy, racism, and to flagrantly lie to us, and even, you didn't even read the book, buddy. I have been highlighting and sending your goofy passages to the bot even. We have been laughing and mocking all the way along. And Dr. Thomas, are you serious? Matter of fact, look. This is chapter 3, The Rise of Trump. Ethno-traditional nationalism in an age of immigration. As the hippies grew up, talking about white people here in the States, they developed new group narratives around occupation and lifestyle. Often members of countercultural lifestyle enclaves lived in identifiable sections of large cities such as Greenwich Village, the original home of the young intellectuals, or Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. One index of rising bohemianism was the explosion in the number of artists in New York from a few thousand in the 1960s to 100,000 by the early 1970s. Meanwhile, the share of single households in Manhattan had surged to 1/3 of the city's population by 1980. In the 1980s, upwardly mobile yuppies professionals came to adopt aspects of bohemianism, combined economic self-interest with social liberalism. That's just one, but even in a passage like that, that's one where I said the regions that you're talking about exactly, Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, Greenwich Village, are these bastions of racial integration? Are you out of your flippin' almost or mostly accepted as white mind? San Francisco is a beacon of race. Get out, and they will say San Francisco, California, Governor Gavin Newsom, oh yeah, progressive. We are all about anti-racism and doing right by the dark people. Man, ain't no niggers in San Francisco. Ain't no niggers to talk about we married them. Ain't no niggers to talk about they got good jobs. Ain't no niggers to talk about we ain't got no more segregation. Ain't no niggers in San Francisco. What are you even talking about? That's what I mean. All of it. Oh my God. I would be proud to stick my chest out and say, I did not read one sentence of this lying garbage you trying to get on the white race. Yes, I would be glad to stick my chest out, but oh man, slogging through this nonsense. And like I said, that's 2 in a row. That's 2 in a row. Books that I've read where total nonsense, not helpful at all. And I would still say reading is more important than watching television. I'd prefer to read constructive books. This does not qualify at all. But I mean, this isn't even meant to be a book that is constructive for non-white people, like at all. This is a book to cheerlead for white people. When you have a book that's saying, when you have a person, I wouldn't care who it is, even if he was non-white and he said, I'm sad about that, but I know I'm too dark, I can't get on the team. You have someone who's writing a book saying, we need to allow white people to be proud to be white. You already know. Any hoodles. Yeah, I was going to still try and think a bit of white culture that does not have any. Apple pie? I can't even get apple pie. I can't even get apple pie. Look here, look here, look here. Who pick the apples? Ice, ice, baby. Anyway, if you think of the white culture that ain't got nothing to do with mistreating non-white people, no racism, let us know. Even my question, what's the point of being white if we're not going to practice racism? Anyway, I had a whole bunch of questions because I read so much of this nonsense and it was so much foolishness. Like, man, that's all I could do was write. Like, what? Anyway, we'll be here. So I hope we will not be here until Thursday, and then we'll double dip on Thursday early. Oof. And then we'll do neutralizing workplace racism. I'm going to conserve my energy with the time shift. If you have questions, thoughts, you can save them for Thursday, and we'll do it up neutralizing workplace racism. Hopefully constructive and worthy of folks. I don't even know what this is. What is this? Got me so discombobulated. I guess Tuesday or Monday afternoon. Hopefully it'll be worthy of folks Monday afternoon, and we will get to it pronto. Make sure I did not miss making sure Dr. Thomas was not with us, because I told him he could dial in. I was going to try and get a question, but our guest departed. We'll get to it down the road. Much obliged for the folks tuning in. Hopefully worthy of your time and energy. Worthy of your time and energy. Again, we'll be here at the latest, or Thursday, 2 programs, one early, and then neutralizing workplace racism in the middle of the day. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We need high-functioning brain computers to solve the problem. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.